Hey guys, welcome to another edition of Leaders and Learners, where we know that the best leaders are lifetime learners. And today I'm bringing you guys someone I think is pretty dope. I've been reading so much information on this guy and the work that he's been doing, and the fact that he created something with his wife that I think you'll all be very interested in. We play in the same sand, so I'm actually going to be a learner today. I'm open to learning some new things from someone that plays in the sand in my box, a little PR, a little branding. He's actually pretty excellent in brand work, and he has his own podcast. So he has his podcast and he's an author. Listen, I'm excited to bring you this amazing new. I think we're going to be friends, so we will definitely see. But there's an opportunity for all of us to lead, and learn something new from Mr. Jeremy Slate. Hey, how are you?
Hey, I'm stoked to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Listen, people that speak the same language in brand work and PR comms type of thing, authors, podcasting, all this cool stuff. I get super excited to listen and learn from people that are doing great things. I think the audience is going to be excited to have you. And I'm just, I'm thrilled that you took the time because from looking at everything you're doing, you're pretty busy. So why don't you go ahead and let us know a little bit more about yourself, where you're from, why you do what you do, and all that cool stuff.
Yeah, I'm from Northwest New Jersey. I live on a small 4-acre farm here, a couple dozen chickens, a pig, 1-year-old and a 3-year-old daughter. We actually just got some ducks recently too. I've been married for 7 years now, and I run a company called Command Your Brand, which all started with a podcast I started in 2015 called the Create Your Own Life Show. So we've been crazy busy here, as you alluded to. As in the month of June alone, we have the book launch for next Tuesday. We have an au pair that's moving in. We're redoing our offices as well as hiring. And then we've also been doing some work on our brand story as well. So it has been like the busiest 4 or 5 weeks of my entire life. So yeah, you're definitely right. It's been a busy time.
Listen, I really want to start off with talking about change. Okay. I know
Yeah.
change is hard for people, but there has been so much of it lately. The landscape that has presented itself to us with the changes that have come about with podcasting
hmm
is incredible. So, talk to me about how you started your podcast, why, and how much you've seen just that industry change since you started.
So frankly, I got here because I failed at so many different things. I have my master's degree in ancient history, which is not a very like applicable skill in the world of getting a job. So I taught high school for a couple years. And in 2012, my mom ended up having a really bad stroke, and it made me look at a lot of things I was doing. And I'm like, do I want to be teaching high school the rest of my life for, barely above minimum wage here, since it was private school? And do I want to be doing this the rest of my life? And the answer was no. It took me about a year to get the courage to do anything with it. And that first thing I jumped into from there was network marketing. From there, I went to selling life insurance. Then I bought products from China and then resold them on Amazon. And I finally had started working at a friend's marketing firm just to pay the bills. And I started a podcast called Create Your Own Life to really just get out there and be my creative outlet. I didn't have any intention of making any money with it, of doing anything with it. And we saw 10,000 listens in our first month. And it was a pretty incredible experience to really get out there and to get attention from it.
I pride myself on not just telling people, hey, you can do it, but actually giving them some actionable steps to do it.
Yeah.
You just gave out a pretty dope stat about your numbers when you first began. Can you talk about how you did that? What was your
It's
formula? Talk to me about that.
it's changed a lot, Tanya. Like it really has. And I'll tell you one of the really big things is when I started in 2014, I tried my first podcast, which was terrible. 2015, when I launched my current show, there were only 240,000 podcasts out there. There's just over 3 million now. So it's a much different space. Now, there's a few things that I think are important to know about that. Is in 2015, when I started, iTunes New and Noteworthy, which became Apple Podcasts, was still a really big deal. It's out there now, but it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things like it used to. And the number one thing that ranks a podcast in Apple Podcasts and at that time iTunes is number of subscribers you can get in a 24-hour period in ratio to your current number of subscribers. So let's say yourself and another podcast, the other podcast is bigger, but you can have a consistent daily jump in your number of subscribers in ratio to your current subscribers. You can jump them in the standings because it's just about growth percentage. It's not actually about like total downloads are part of the formula, but the subscribes is really the highest thing. So I knew going into it that if I could hit the number of subscribers, which I didn't, my target was to try and get 100. We got about 60 reviews out of that. So I'm figuring we got close to that 100 number, because you got to figure that you're probably losing anywhere from a third to a quarter in terms of fall off from the actual subscribes to the reviews. So we tried to push as many as we could initially. And I didn't have much of a following at that point in time. As I mentioned, I'd failed at a bunch of things. So I had almost no social media following. So one of the things I did is I had built a small email list from all these different projects I had done, had about 700 people on it. So I had reached out to those people and asked them to subscribe to the show. I then texted every single person in my phone with the same thing, messaged people on Facebook, and I found out Facebook kind of cuts you off around 500, where you can't send that same link anymore. That's kind of, it tends to be the number where they disable that link. Yes. Like, this link is now banned, so you can't send it anymore. I tried the same thing on LinkedIn, and I didn't know there was a thing called automation. So at that point in time, I sent out about 3,000 copy and paste messages. It took me about 8 hours in order to send those out to get people to subscribe. So I did all that early on. I was even grabbing friends' phones and showing them how to subscribe to my show. So that created enough attention to net me 60 reviews, which I'm guessing got me somewhere around 100 subscribers at that point in time. And I hit new and noteworthy, and I got that 8 weeks of free promotion. Now it's different now because you're not going to get that same power out of new and noteworthy to get the attention that I got.
Yeah.
So we can go into the strategy for now if you want, but that was what got me started in 2015.
No, I mean, that's good to know. Even those techniques, I think, are great reminders to people that, one, they need to tap into their resources, right? I think people forget what they have at their fingertips. They get a little blinded by all the sparkly things out there, the new tools, instead of some of the things that you already have right at your disposal. So your mailing list, the contacts that you already have, are you utilizing them? And you have been able to grow your pod, right? You grew your pod, now you have a book. Listen, I appreciate you sending me a copy of the book. I love what I was reading. I was like, I love this guy.
I hope you didn't get the copy with the misspellings, because we found out the wrong one was in the press guide. So hopefully you didn't get that.
This is a non-judgmental zone right now. I'm all about content, okay? And what you had to say was incredibly important. So I want you to share with me why you wrote the book, because as an author, I know it's hard. It's not easy to complete. Like, we have these grand ideas about, I'm going to be an author, I'm going to start. And then you start and you're like, I don't know. So talk to me about those moments where you were like, I don't know about this.
So the strategy was really like a brand level up, right? Like, you look at a lot of, I look at a lot of people, at least I respect, and I see like, yeah, I could have written the next PR book, or I could have written the next podcasting book, or whatever it is. But I realized to really level up the brand, since a lot of my personal brand is based off the podcast, it was going to have to be something based off of the conversations I've had in the podcast and be a really big concept. Because I think big concepts are those things that can transcend, where sometimes if you focus on too niche of a topic when writing a book, it can kind of pigeonhole you. So what I was really trying to do is write something that would transcend. And I always wanted to write something, but I had always told myself, it wasn't time, or I wasn't good enough, or whatever it may be. And I finally got to a point 5 years in that I felt like it was time. But I will tell you, I wrote this book in 2019, and I threw away the entire manuscript because I just thought it was terrible. I rewrote the book between 2020 and the beginning of 2021. And then my editor absolutely ripped it apart before the publisher went to print with it. So I'm really happy with how we got here, but I will tell you, the writing process was really difficult because for me, as I mentioned, I have a master's in history. So like, I'm an academic writer. So like, copywriting I had to learn early on was really hard for me. Taking those copywriting skills and then turning it into prose like you do with a book like this was a lot more difficult, because I had to learn to write in that voice. So the thing that really worked for me is, number one, a lot of what I'm doing is based off of interviews that I've done, but it's not straight transcripts, because I didn't want to do that. I thought that would be kind of a lame idea. So what I did is I put together a Google Doc, and I took some of the transcripts I wanted to use, and then I put them all in line with how I wanted to use them. Then the next thing I did is took out the sections I wanted, made those a little bit prosaic. And then what I did is I actually did all the connections using Google Docs as a feature where you can turn text or voice into text, which you then have to go over again because it's terrible English, but at least gets you moving. So I was able to do a lot of that to kind of fill it in. And then I was able to actually take that and make that into something more written. But at least the process for me was like that. And I'm weird. I don't know about you when you write something, but like I tend to start in the middle and then go to the end and the beginning and try to make them agree. That's at least how I write.
Okay, I've been all over the board like that. I thought that was just me. All right. Listen, the thing that excites me about you is you write in your own voice. We've talked about this. We have a PR group, PR Lunch Hour on Twitter every Friday. And we talked about AP style, right? And how important AP style is to some people. And I actually had a friend of mine in there, Jazz, and she's amazing. She's done some work that have been like in the Adidas app and a few other big brands. And she said what I was thinking. I just didn't see it out loud because I thought people were going to look at me crazy. She writes in her own voice and people love it. So my book is in my voice. So I want to read something that you wrote and I want you to comment on it because I love it.
Can I just say one thing about that too? Is like, I don't have all the training and background that you've done. Like you have a lot of background in PR. My wife has that, right? Like, cause she has a degree in that. But for me, I think it actually, in some ways it helped me because I had no framework. Do you know what I mean? Like it was just kind of like, I'm going to put it together and just kind of see how it goes.
But that is the thing that resonates with people to decide if they like you and trust you. Sometimes I think when we are trying to fit our thoughts and feelings into a certain framework, it gets a little too like stiff. And I don't get to know you. Like I know what you're saying, but I don't get to know you. And I want to, as someone that loves brands, I want to get to love you. Like you're looking for a cult following. I'm not going to follow AP brand. I'm going to follow your voice and what you're saying. So first thing that resonated with me in your book is I'm from a world where participation trophies don't exist. There are winners and losers in life. Self-esteem isn't a right. It's an earned achievement. Hello. Talk to me about that.
So my dad was a professional baseball player that didn't really make it. Like he played in the minor leagues and he's, in my viewpoint, one of the most talented athletes I've ever seen, but he got hurt early in his career and that kind of ended his career. And so that's kind of the viewpoint it came from. Like I was a really good baseball player. And I remember like early on we got like that when it was, what is it like before majors and or whatever, you do minors or whatever. And I'm trying to remember the types of like little league baseball, whatever the heck it's called. But anyway, like we got they gave the whole team trophies. My dad's like, you guys finished in last place and lost every game. What's the point? And the thing I think is dangerous about that is there's benefit to losing if you know how to do it the right way. Like if you lose and you can take a look at this and say, okay, we did that wrong. We played terrible defense. That person should be pitching. That guy needs to move from left to center. We all need to take more batting practice. Then you can figure out how to win again, right? Like, but I think if you're taking it from a viewpoint where like, losing is good or just participating is good, it's kind of like, well, what's the point? So to me, if you're going to lose, that's okay. That happens in life, right? We get a lot of that and hopefully you're winning more than losing. But if you can use that as a blueprint to do something from, that's a huge benefit. So that's the viewpoint that comes from.
So my husband and I are avid non-funpetic parents. So funpetics, that's what it is.
What does that mean?
Fun athletics. So
okay.
Like you gave it your best. I'm like, you're lying. You didn't give it your best.
You sound like my dad.
And if your best is that, then you need to work harder to be better than your best. Like this is unacceptable. Okay, we don't do, I won't even, now they have it at the beginning of the season where you can, put in money so that all the kids get trophies or whatever at the end at the party. Listen, if we don't get the trophies that come from the league because we won, I'm not taking that home. I ain't got time for that. I ain't got time for that. That's no. So that's funpetics. That's what it's called.
Yeah.
And
It's interesting though, because if you look at that, so I was a shortstop second baseman. That was like my position, but so was the coach's son. But and even though he was terrible, so he played, and they started benching me after a while. My dad's like, "Well, what are you gonna do about it?" I'm like, I don't know. So I called the coach, and the coach goes, "My son is the heart and soul of the team." And I'm like, "You're kidding?" And I'm like 12 years old at this point in time. So my dad says to me, "Okay, so what are you gonna do about it?" And I said, "Well, I guess I could learn to play the outfield because our center fielder is terrible." So my first day in the outfield, I've always played the infield. It is way different. I go to catch a fly ball. It goes over the top of my glove and hits me in the below the belt region.
Wow.
The single most embarrassing moment of my life. So here's what I did. I then convinced my dad to hit fly balls to me every night for 3 or 4 hours every night for like a month and a half. And when they moved me to center field because I was the best outfielder on the team. But like that was only because I had a really bad, really embarrassing loss. You know what I mean? That's the benefit in it.
I absolutely 100% agree. So just letting you know, you're not weird. We are the same. We are the same.
Cool.
I'm for everyone being respected as a human being. Hate doesn't look good on you. Where did that come from?
You know, you meet some people that they're just like, I don't know. I don't know how to describe this. You meet some people and you're just like, wow, you're just like super angry. And it's really interesting. Like, you know, I may not agree with a lot of people, and sometimes I talk politics on my podcast, but I've had a lot of people on that I disagree with, and because I believe there's room to discuss things, and sometimes there's even room for collaboration in that. So to me, I just think, you know, being somebody that was bullied as a kid and stuff like that, and had a lot of that, I don't want anybody else to ever feel like that. So to me, I think there's a lot of respect we can grant with others. Doesn't mean you have to agree with them, but I think that kind of leaves the room for that. So that's the viewpoint that comes from.
Oh my God. I'm giving this book to every hater I know.
There's value in haters though when you have a business sometimes though. You know what I mean? Because it's fuel sometimes.
Absolutely. 100%. But they still need to learn that it sucks and it doesn't look good on them. So I'm against telling our children they need drugs because they can't sit still. Rather, I'm for finding out how to teach them better and play to their strengths. Let me comment on this really quick. I've been having a really hard time with this myself because in our culture, if we look at how things work, Big Pharma seems to be winning the more we tell our kids something is wrong with them, especially now where so many are being diagnosed with depression and anxiety and dealing with all types of post-COVID trauma. Mm-hmm. We're not looking for how we can be better to them. We're just looking to medicate them, not how we, the people around them that affect them, can be better to keep them in a better headspace. So I think you are absolutely correct. But where did you get that from?
So a lot of this is from life experience, as sad as it is. So I was one of those like really smart kids in like first and second grade. So I'd finish all my work really, really fast. And because of that, they're like, oh, they talked to my parents. Like, all right, we're going to put him in the talented and gifted program. So what that meant is my work was just double the length of the other kids. It wasn't like harder. So I'm like, well, I'm just not going to do the longer stuff. So, you know, I was like throwing pencils, doing all this kind of stuff. So they eventually had a meeting with my parents. They're like, so if he wants to stay in public school, he's going to have to take, I think it was Ritalin at that point in time was what they were like trying to get everybody to take. Yep. And my parents are like, number one, aren't you a principal and a teacher? Where's the doctor as part of this? That's who they met with. And, you know, my parents they were only high school graduates. They didn't have a ton of money. So like, but we're going to put them in private school because we don't want that to happen to them. And it goes back to what you talk about. Like, we need to figure out how to channel that stuff, right? I don't know if education is how it's set up to help our kids. You know, it's set up to, okay, memorize this and regurgitate it. Okay, well, now tell me what you can do with that. So for me, that's where it comes from is I don't want kids that can just memorize stuff because I've been there. Like, I've experienced it. I want people that can think outside of the box because that's where innovation comes from. That's where, like, if you look at a lot of like great entrepreneurs, they were troubled kids. They were getting all over the place because they had energy that somebody didn't know how to channel. So I think as parents, you know, I have a 1 and a 3-year-old. My 3-year-old, she's not going to survive public school. So we're definitely homeschooling because she's got like the vocabulary of a 10-year-old at 3. She's amazing. But like, I think if there's so much we can do with that as parents and even as teachers.
I 100% agree. Listen, now that people are starting to recognize this, I don't think everyone's caught on yet. I went into one of my daughter's classes. I think she was in like third or fourth grade, and there was kids like laying all over the place. There was a bean bag, and one of them was on the bean bag just doing her homework. So I talked to the teacher about the new approach, and she said, I'm now recognizing that people learn different, that some kids, you don't know what's going on at home. So if they're doing their homework and they happen to fall asleep, listen, you don't know what their home life is like. Maybe they don't get enough sleep. Maybe they have, things going on. But it was so incredible to hear her actually thinking beyond the basics, and what they're taught to do, but how she can be a better educator and deal with the diversity of learning styles in her class. So I thought that was incredibly huge. So when I saw that, I was like, I like this guy. What is going on? So
I taught high schoolers too. So like, I taught sophomore, I taught U.S. History 1 and U.S. History 2. And one of the things I told the kids is I'm like, there's like 3 dates I want you to know. When was the country founded? When was the Constitution ratified? And, a few other things in history. But other than that, I want you to know cause and effect. I want you to know, like, who are the people that were part of these different things? How did we get here? What happened because of that? Because if you can understand concepts, I don't care as much about you knowing like dates and stuff like that. But people put so much emphasis on rote memorization when you can understand concepts, you can do things with them.
Absolutely. Last one, my favorite. I'm against recreational drugs. Getting dumber doesn't sound like my idea of a good time. Where'd you get it?
I just think we're dumbing down our nation, frankly. It's one of the I think it was 100,000 Americans died last year from fentanyl. Like, we're really struggling with killing our next generation by not handling the drug epidemic in this country. So to me, I think doing that, we're just putting people in a stupor. So I'm just not a big fan of that. I think there's something needs to be done about it. We go into schools and we actually talk to kids about it. But like, I think that the drug problem in this country is swept way too much under the rug, and we need to do something about it.
100% agreed. You highlight how important relationships are in building a business. Where did that idea come from you, and where do you see it being most impactful in your business?
For me, actually, the biggest place it's been impactful is I do a lot of keynote speaking, but I never actually intended to. I've just really been somebody that I try to show up and offer as much information and help as I possibly can. And because of that, I've been able to build really great relationships with clients, with podcast hosts. And a lot of times what'll happen, a week ago, I was in Mexico and I did a keynote there for a mastermind. And people just say like, hey, I would love you to come in and teach my group about XYZ because I know you did such a great job at it. So for me, it's been seeing how much value I can offer and trying to offer as much as possible. And because of that, I've gotten a lot of keynote speaking out of it. And that's been a really big thing for me in terms of getting our business out there. Because, as you know, PR is about having people know you, like you, and trust you. And for me, being able to be on stage with a group is one of the ways I'm actually really good at that.
Yeah, I like that. Podcasts help you build your brand, but that's only if you do it right?
Yep.
What is your best advice to people that can get on podcasts, but they don't really know how to utilize that to grow their brand awareness and their opportunity to connect with their target market?
So would you say from the viewpoint of being a host or from the viewpoint of being a guest?
A guest.
So as a guest, I think one of the most important things to understand, and this is probably something as a host you've experienced, like sometimes you meet the infomercial person and you're like, okay, you're going to sell me the sham wow now because for only $19.95 we're going to do this. And they just like, they don't shut up about their landing page or whatever it is. And they're like, so it's like, don't be that guy. To me, if you can really figure out how to authentically show up and really have a great conversation and, really offer value, you're going to get a lot out of it. But I think too often people have first in front of mind, like what they want to get out of the interview rather than what they're going to offer. So I would say that's the viewpoint you have to have first and foremost if you want to win. I would say the other part about it is when you're reaching out to podcasts, have to remember that you're servicing an audience, and that's what's first and foremost to the host. So you have to put your needs in front of their needs, and really when you're reaching out with that pitch, talk about how you can help somebody, what you can teach them, and what people walk away with. Because you have to have the viewpoint of whether people buy something from me or not, what are they going to walk away with? And more often than not, people will actually follow you because of that. So that's one part of it. The thing I would say with the appearance. The other thing I would say as well is you have to understand when you're looking at something as a PR action, it's getting people to know you, like you, and trust you. And I always look at it with three separate things. You have sales, marketing, and public relations. And public relations always comes first. Because if you're not selling, you take a look at your marketing. And if your marketing's not converting, you take a look at PR. So PR allows you to create trust and allows you to have people understand you. But at the same time, it creates the pieces for marketing to use. Because now all the content you're creating with these podcasts should be things you should be marketing. And any landing page you're using for that, there's a couple different things you need to have on that landing page. One, there's a really great app called getemails.com. And they have a database of like 30,000 people that have opted in for different offers. That it's totally white hat and it's not a problem. But you put that code on the landing page and they could take people that have been to the landing page that haven't opted in and opt them into your lists. That's one thing. The second thing is have a Facebook retargeting pixel, because then you can run ads for people that have been to that page within 30 days, 60 days, and 90 days and have them retargeted for you. So you need to be taking a look at, it's not just the appearance, it's the appearance, how I show up, and then what I do with the content, right? It's an active process of figuring out how you can use it.
So there are some people that believe that they can do any podcast because it will help them. That's all almost like the throw the spaghetti at the wall. So they apply to be on every podcast and swear they have great information for every podcast. Give those people your best piece of advice in regards to what podcast they should actually be trying to be on.
Well, everybody thinks they should be on Joe Rogan. At least that's what I found out.
Yeah.
Every client that comes to me is like, so I want to be on Joe Rogan, I want to be on the School of Greatness, and I want to be on Impact Theory. And I'm like, so does everybody else. So I think the first thing you have to do is kind of get your ego out of the way, because some of that does come from ego. And it's about niching down and sometimes niching down till it hurts. Because when you can do that, you know what those people talk about, how they talk about it, what their home lives are like, what their relationship styles are like, what their work style is like. Let's say you're going to chiropractors that work in small towns. Well, they're going to have very different needs versus ones that work in cities. So when you're looking at who you're targeting, you really have to niche down to who you talk to and how you talk to them. Because if your audience is everybody, it's nobody. And the thing that you'll find is when you can do that, when you can build power in a niche, you can broaden eventually. But you got to build power in a niche first before you can go outside of that. And I think when it comes to niching down, you kind of got to do it till it hurts. Because you're like, all right, well, how well do you know them? And I know some people like to talk to a specific person and give them a name or whatever that is. I think that's a little weird. But for me, it's kind of like, if you can really target it to a person, then you understand how they would communicate, how they talk, what they care about. And when you can do that, that's when you're going to win more, because you actually speak in their language.
I love that. So it goes along with when we're talking to people that want press and they think every outlet is for them.
And it's a la carte too, right?
Every outlet is for them. Everybody wants to hear what they're doing. They think they're amazing. And like, okay, why should these readers think you're amazing? Why should these readers believe that what you're doing is newsworthy? And it's just really a crazy conversation and trying to get people to understand that. What is your method of getting people to understand how important their brand is and the niche? I think that's kind of it.
So how many people do you get that come to you and you're like, so I want to be on Good Morning America. I want to be on Oprah. I want to. I think she just has a web show now, right? But like, there's people that like think they should be on all those things, and like, so like we had a client that before they worked with us, they were actually on Oprah, but they sold industrial products. So let me tell you, they got no business from that appearance because it's not the right market fit. Oprah's cool, and she does a great interview, but if it's not the right market fit, it's not going to serve you. So the biggest thing we end up doing with clients and talking about that, we talk about like, well, what purpose will that serve? You know what I mean? And you got to get somebody to really, really understand that. And I'll be frank with you. people that I haven't been able to get to understand that, we give them their money back, because I don't want to have that headache 3 months from now, 6 months from now, a year from now. But you have to get people to understand what is the purpose you're doing this for and what is the purpose you want to achieve.
Yeah.
And if you can get somebody to buy into purpose and why they're doing this, it's really, really vital, because a big part of our process as well is before somebody's ever on a podcast, we do a lot of media training with them. They need to know how to be a great interview, how to tell a great story, how to tie in their talking points and make it make sense. And we've had people come to us before and be like, yeah, I just want the shows and I don't need that. And it's like, all right, great, refund. Because like for me, like I don't want to deal with that, because I know like how much it's gonna really annoy my employees. You know what I mean? Like I want to make it so we can actually get somebody there. And part of it sometimes is, I don't want to be a jerk about it, but it's really being upfront and being honest. You know what I mean? Like, what is the purpose that you want to achieve here? And with what you want, is that going to help us get that purpose?
100%. Listen, I could keep you here all day. I have one more question for you. I want to know your thoughts about influencers and how they have changed the landscape in PR and marketing.
Oh, that's a tough one. That's like a loaded question, frankly.
Come on now.
Because it also like ties down what is influence, right? Like, because you can go look at somebody on Instagram and be like, "Where's all your engagement?" Like,
Well,
you know what I mean? So they're
talk to the people that are the listeners, so they understand, because I think most people that are not in our industry just believe, if I have an influencer, I'm going to sell 1 million books. If I have an influencer, I'm going to, make all this money. Like, what should they be looking for in regards to how they use influencers to do whatever it is they're trying to do?
That's a great question. Okay. Because like here's the I don't know if you remember this, and I can't remember the girl's name, but there was a girl that she was an influencer, had like over 1 million followers, and then she released a t-shirt line, and she sold like one t-shirt, and she was like berating her followers for not buying them. So one of the things, I know there's a company that actually does this as one of their main marketing strategies. They're a tea company called Teamy Blends.
Mm-hmm.
And I've talked to the founder about this a lot. Like, one of the things they look for is they're looking at engagement. What does it look like? They're looking at how the person uses products in their posting, because that's really important as well. Because the real value in influencer marketing is when it's seeming like a recommendation and not a pitch. So I think those are a couple things. And at the same time, there's a lot of value in micro influencers versus macro influencers, because their fans are a little bit more crazy and interested. So I think as well, it's not always about the big numbers. Engagement's tops, right? Like, if people are engaging with them, that's a really big deal. But also looking at how they integrate products in their life when they're using them or promoting them or whatever it may be, because that's gonna show you who has the most value for you. And I know that founder I mentioned, she runs a spreadsheet where she's checking off and she scores them, I think, on like 1 to 5 on like how they're doing on those different things. And when you can find that, you're going to find an influencer that's going to work for your brand. But at the same time, I wouldn't have kind of like false hopes on what that looks like. You're not going to have every influencer make you $1 million. It's just not how it works. But if you work with a large number of micro influencers, that can really help you move the ball down the road. But I wouldn't make that your only strategy, frankly.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that with the audience. Now, before I let you go, let everyone else know what you have coming up, how they can support you, continue to follow the work that you're doing, and get in contact with you if they need some help.
Absolutely. So they can find me on all social platforms. I'm at Jeremy Ryan Slate. My parents named me after a bad cowboy actor. And that's why I use my middle name, because his name was also Jeremy Slate, and he's got a lot of media. So it took me a little while to outrank him on Google. So I'm at Jeremy Ryan Slate on all platforms. My new book coming out on June 21st is called Unremarkable to Extraordinary. It's about a lot of the things we've talked about here today on like how we reach success and what it really looks like. So you can get that over at getextraordinarybook.com. And for listeners here, if they come back with their order number, we're going to give them a free version of the audiobook, which will be released in September, as well as our guide of 30 Days to Extraordinary. So that's getextraordinarybook.com.
Listen, I could really talk to you all day, probably because we speak the same language, but I enjoy what I've read from the book. Love this conversation. I hope we stay in contact, and I definitely appreciate you for being here. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
All the information will be down in the captions, so make sure you get the book, you follow him, you support, and increase your IQ on PR and branding, guys. Absolutely. Thanks, Jeremy. Yep. So listen, leaders and learners, my audience, I hope you learned something today. I say all this stuff often about branding, about PR, but it always helps when you hear it from someone else. Influencers are important and they can be impactful, but you have to have the right ones. Your story is important, but you have to be telling it to the right people. And just continue to read and learn. Jeremy's book is great. It's very humanistic. So I recommend it to many of you, especially those that I know are viewers, and some of the things that you think and how you process information. All of those things make you better in business. They make you better storytellers, and they enhance your ability to connect with your core audience. So until next time, I hope to see you back here soon. You guys take it easy, leaders and learners.